Shocking truth, how Judah and Israel's division haunts us today at 3 a.m., uncover the real reason. In the chilling stillness of night, the clock struck 3. An hour wrapped in shadows, secrets lurking just out of sight. Just as the darkness feels heavy, so did the air, thick with the weight of unspoken histories and the restless whispers of souls long forgotten. A creaking floorboard snapped the tension, echoing through the empty halls of a derelict house that once buzzed with life. Every crevice breathed tales of betrayal, pain, and an ancient division that spiraled into present-day turmoil. It was here, in the heart of this forsaken place, that a bone-chilling mystery awaited revelation. The first strange element fluttered at the edge of perception, a flicker of light. Not just any light, but a gentle glow, pulsating like a heartbeat in the surrounding abyss. Rushing to the source, the air quivered with electric anticipation. A faded piece of parchment lay on a table, inscribed with symbols that felt both foreign and eerily familiar. Judah and Israel, two territories split by pride and power, their echoes thrumming in the veins of modern society. Were these age-old emblems simply relics of an ancient feud, or did they hold the key to understanding the current unrest? As the wind howled, causing the windows to rattle, a chill snaked up the spine. The distant howls of wolves mingled with cries of anguish, reminiscent of battles fought long ago. Pale moonlight spilled across the floor, casting eerie shadows that danced like phantoms. Was it mere imagination or a warning from the past, desperate for acknowledgement? Outside, the unrest manifested as the tormented moans of a community, divided by blood, just as Judah and Israel had been. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, the eeriness heightened with every passing moment. Suddenly, a thunderous crash echoed from the attic, sending shivers down the spine and tightening chests. What could it be? Was it simply the collapse of a forgotten structure or something far darker? Heartbeats raced as courage pushed the door ajar. The musty air drew in, filling lungs with dread. Shadows swirled, promising glimpses into truths buried under layers of silence. Then, amid the chaos, a figure emerged from the gloom, a silhouette that seemed to absorb the light. Eyes, hollow yet charged with ancient knowledge, pierced through the darkness, holding all the answers. Who were they? A protector? A harbinger of despair? The air crackled with tension, leaving only one urgent question: could this moment unleash the hidden history of Judah and Israel, forever altering the trajectory of the living? Or would it trap even more souls in the cycle of division? The answers hung tantalizingly close yet just out of reach. The figure in the shadows shifted, the laughably faint light revealing just enough to ignite both fear and fascination. As they stepped forward, the mundane creak of floorboards echoed like thunder in the silence. The weight of their presence pressed down heavily, a blend of unease and inevitability that held everyone in thrall. Who are you? The voice barely carried above a whisper, trembling with uncertainty yet laced with defiance. It was almost lost in the tension that hung thick like fog. The figure paused, their mouth curling into a ghost of a smile, a knowing glimmer in the depths of their dark eyes. I am what remains, the keeper of the truths you fear to find, they spoke, their voice resonating as if drawn from the very walls around them. The history of Judah and Israel is not just a tale of old weaving through time, it threads itself into your modern conflicts, your divisions. The words struck like a hammer against glass. The air felt charged, the atmosphere crackling with anticipation. What secrets could they possibly hold? Did the figure truly know the origins behind the rage and resentment simmering just below the surface? Before anyone could probe further, a jolting crash echoed again, shaking the house as if it were alive. What was that? Someone gasped, glancing back toward the staircase leading to the attic. No one leaves, the figure commanded, their voice sharp like ice, slicing through the fear. You must understand the past is not done with you yet. Those echoes you hear, they call for justice, for reckoning. The community outside seemed to respond in chorus, murmurs swelling into anguished cries. It was as if the very fabric of the night was woven from the fears and battles of those who had come before. With each utterance, tension mounted, the unspoken rage of generations vibrating through the walls, a reminder that the wounds of division were far from healed. A flicker of recognition sparked in the listeners' eye, remembering stories passed down through families, whispers that always sounded like legends. Yet here they stood, feet planted on the cusp of reality and myth, caught in a maelstrom of emotion. As the figure stepped closer, the ethereal light flickered dangerously. The parchment on the table glowed brighter, the symbols seemingly shifting, morphing under scrutiny. They danced chaotically, inviting interpretation, a puzzle begging to be solved. Each symbol tells a story, the stranger urged, extending a hand toward the parchment. Every fight, every betrayal, every bond that has been broken or reforged, they are the key to understanding why this torment continues. But the weight of those histories pressed down heavily. What should someone do with such knowledge? Would uncovering these threads strengthen their resolve, or deepen the division within? The questions echoed unanswered, gnawing at the edges of consciousness. Suddenly, the walls began to shake, dust cascading from the ceiling. It felt like the very house was reacting to the awakening of old spirits. The cries outside rose higher, fear and fury mixing into a harrowing anthem that clawed at sanity. Time is short. The figure shouted, urgency seeping into their tone. You must choose, confront the truth or remain in the shadows of your own making. Then, with a swift motion, they pointed toward the door leading to the attic, the way forward shrouded in an eerie glow. Each heart thudded in stomachs, hesitation holding them back like iron chains. What awaited them up there? A deeper understanding? Or perhaps, a fate worse than ignorance? As a hand reached hesitantly for the doorknob, another crash erupted, sending the room into chaos. The moment hung on the precipice, the air thick with desperation. Was anyone ready to face the storm? With a final pulse of light, the figure whispered, choose wisely. The past will not be denied what lay behind that door, and would the weight of history fracture or forge a new path? A decision loomed heavy over them all. The silence in the room split as the door to the attic trembled, a curious energy radiating from just beyond its frame. Each breath felt loud, too loud, as anticipation thundered against their chests. The figure stood firm, dark eyes piercing through the uncertainty, urging someone to step forward, to break the suffocating stillness. Someone has to do it, a voice finally broke out. Emma, known for her unyielding spirit. She stepped closer, drawn by an invisible thread. The murmur of agreement swelled in the crowd, yet a hesitance lingered like a shadow. What if we find something we weren't meant to see? Whispered David, his voice barely a breath. A cold sweat trickled down his back. He remembered the stories of ancestors who had ventured into the unknown, only to be swallowed whole by their own pasts. Why do you fear the truth? The figure pressed, the flickering light illuminating their features eerily. Isn't it better to know where the rift lies than to remain in the dark, ignorant of the wounds festering inside you? The crash from above intensified. It felt like a drumbeat, summoning deeper fears that lay dormant. The attic door shuddered again, as if the spirits themselves were eager for release or perhaps revenge. Emma swallowed hard, a deep inhalation filled with resolve enough to shake off the doubt. No more hiding, she declared, her voice stronger than before. If there is a way to heal, then let us find it. She reached for the doorknob, the cold metal biting into her skin. As she turned it, a gust of wind wrestled through the room, swirling around them, lifting their hair, carrying whispers on its breath. Instinctively, they backed away, the air charged with something ancient and unwelcoming. With a final twist, Emma swung the door open, revealing a dark expanse that stretched beyond the limits of imagination. The attic was not merely a space, it was a portal, fragments of past echoes swirling in the shadows, glimmering in rhythms of long-forgotten conflict. Just beyond the threshold was a dusty chest, adorned with symbols that mirrored those on the parchment. Emma felt her heart pound, a pulsing beat of dread. What lay within? Could it contain the truth she sought, or something far more sinister? Suddenly, another loud crash broke the suffocating ambience, and flickering shadows danced ominously across the walls, the very depiction of chaos that had plagued generations. The fear that gripped their hearts tightened like a vice, yet amidst the terror, an undeniable curiosity ignited. "Don't just stand there," the figure commanded, their tone like steel. "The key to the division lies within. You've been waiting for a moment like this. Open it." Their voices harmonized with the building tension, urging Emma on. With trembling hands, each pulse a riot of nerve and excitement, she approached the chest. The weight of every history, of families broken and bonds shattered, pressed down upon her. As she lifted the lid, a beam of light erupted from inside, illuminating the attic and filling the room with a blinding glow. Gasps echoed, eyes wide with terror and awe. But what she saw, the chest wasn't filled with gold or ancient artifacts, but with rolled scrolls, their edges frayed, the ink still glistening with life. Each scroll seemed to vibrate in her hands, calling out to connect threads that had long been severed. Emma hesitated, the air filled with an electric charge as she reached for the first scroll. Would it offer the redemption they sought, or unleash a fury that would tear them apart? Before she could unravel its secrets, a shrieking howl erupted from the depths of the attic, chilling them all to the core. The ceiling groaned, threatening to collapse under the pressure of unleashed fury. Fight or flight. The figure yelled above the chaos, and the choice tightened like a noose around their necks. Emma hesitated, her heart racing against the clock. What horrors awaited inside those scrolls? Would she dare to unravel them, or would she risk losing everything? The spirit of an epic awaited her choice, and it screamed for justice. Would the past grant them salvation or seal their fate? The decision was hers. The moment Emma's fingers brushed the first scroll, a wave of energy surged through her, sharp and raw, as if the air itself had come alive. "What are you waiting for?" David shouted, dread slicing through his voice. He stepped forward, clutching his arms against an invisible chill. Fear twisted his features. In his mind, he replayed the stories of the attic's dark legacy, the ones that whispered of shadows and madness. With a deep breath, Emma unfurled the scroll before she could second-guess herself. The parchment crackled, the ink shimmering under the swelling light. Words danced before her eyes, names, dates, events that echoed in the corridors of time. She felt a pull. This was no ordinary history, but a confession of wrongs committed, blood spilled, and relationships frayed. As her eyes scanned the text, a spectral whisper floated around them, an anguished sigh that sent shivers racing down Emma's spine. "You are connected," it seemed to murmur, entwining sorrow with longing. "Just read it," the figure commanded, but horror tinged their expression. "You must know what has been hidden away." Emma resisted the urge to recoil as shadows began to coalesce at the edges of her vision. More than one presence lurked within those confounding walls. They weren't alone. The attic thrummed with energy, a waiting pulse echoing the heartbeats of the living and the dead. David's voice trembled. "What if it's a trap? This can't be safe." Before Emma could respond, the scroll rattled violently in her hands. Unfurling it further revealed a map, one she recognized all too well from her grandmother's stories. The old village, a place forgotten to the annals of family lore, cloaked in silent grief, nestled beneath layers of dust and cobwebs. "I need to know," she whispered, pulled deeper into its web. Within those mapped lines lay the secrets that had twisted their lineage, binding them to a fate they never understood. Suddenly, the howl from earlier intensified, a wail of unearthly grief. It surged through the air, rattling windows and shaking the floorboards. The shadows elongated menacingly, converging on their circle as if drawn to the light. "Get out!" the figure shouted, their voice breaking through the rising mayhem. The attic isn't safe anymore. But it was too late. One by one, her friends were entranced by the chest. They edged closer, entrapped by the call of the past, as if the attic had drawn them in with siren songs of history. Their faces, illuminated by the glow from within, showed curiosity mixed with dread. Emma's instinct screamed at her to flee. Yet the truth clawed at her heart. There's something important here. Just as she prepared to dive back into the scroll, a gust of frigid wind tore through the attic, extinguishing the blinding light in an instant. Darkness enveloped them, a suffocating blanket where familiar voices transformed into garbled echoes. Panic surged, pressing in from all sides, fueling her desperation. What do I do? What do I do? Emma yelled, her heart pounding like a drum, lost in the chaos. Read. It's the only way. A voice cried from somewhere in the darkness, barely audible above the rising fury of the howl. With trembling hands, Emma grasped the scroll tighter. Would it guide them away from damnation or seal their doom? Determined, she clutched it against her chest and shouted, I will expose the truth. The very walls of the attic trembled in response, an ancient force awakening. As shadows swirled around her, the scroll began to hum, vibrating with an urgency that lit her insides aflame, but something sinister lurked just beyond reach. The attic moaned, a living entity threatened by Emma's resolve, feeding on their fears and doubt. Each breath they took felt like a countdown. Could she unearth the buried secrets lurking within the scroll and face what they'd awaken? Or would the truth consume them all? As the howl crescendoed, Emma realized what was at stake could change everything. And with that determination, she prepared to plunge into the abyss once again. What revelation awaited them in the depths of the scroll? Would they become victims of their past or conquerors of their destiny? The answer loomed. Emma's heart raced as the chilling darkness engulfed them, each second stretching into an eternity. The scroll vibrated against her chest, a living thing, pulsing with a mysterious energy that felt both dangerous and exhilarating. She could barely see around her, the air thick with a fog of fear and uncertainty. Emma. David's voice penetrated the shadows, tight with panic. What is happening? I don't know. She screamed back, struggling to keep her composure. But we have to trust this. The attic creaked ominously, each groan of wood echoing like a warning. She could feel the weight of the unseen forces surrounding them, ancient and accusing. The whispers intensified, merging into a cacophony that rattled her mind. They were not merely echoes, they were the voices of the past, demanding recognition, seeking release. Taking a deep breath, Emma unfurled the scroll once more, determined to unearth whatever it contained. The soft glow returned, illuminating her friends' wide eyes, reflecting their fear and thrill, the same gleaming spark that tempted her toward the map of the old village. The names and dates danced before her, each word carving deeper into her psyche. Was this her family's shame? The old village, it's where it all happened, she murmured, memories surfacing like bubbles in murky water. Emma. Don't get lost in it. David shouted, his voice strained, pulling her back to the present, but she was already too far gone. The map showed twisted paths leading to places marked with ominous symbols. They hinted at tragedy and betrayal, each line whispering of an ancient feud that had splintered her family long before she was born. Another howl shattered the silence, sharper this time, like a knife cutting through the murmurs. Shadows writhed around her, and Emma could sense their desperation. Whatever this scroll held, it was more than just history, it was alive, wrapped in emotions that spoke of grief, grudges, and unredeemed spirits. Let us just leave. We shouldn't be here, one of her friends began, but Emma cut them off. No. We can't run away. We owe it to them. The conviction in her voice surprised even herself. We need to face whatever haunts this place. The darkness seemed to pulse in response, as if challenging her. Emma steadied herself, the scroll feeling heavier with each heartbeat. She grasped it tightly again, her fingers cramping around the edges. Come forward to reveal, she whispered, not sure if anyone else could hear. Let the truth unfold. A sudden rush of wind burst through the window, slapping the dust from old surfaces, stirring the shadows into a frenzy. The air crackled with energy. Then, in that chaotic moment, the scroll erupted with blinding light. It shot through the attic like a beacon, revealing fleeting images of faces twisted in despair, drenched in tears, caught in cycles of pain. Emma gasped, recognizing the faces. "These are my ancestors." A voice, ethereal and booming, washed over them. "You seek to understand what has been buried? Then you must bear the burden of their truth." "What truth?" Emma shouted over the rising storm. "What do you want from us?" The light from the scroll pulsed violently, drowning her in waves of warmth and terror, all at once. Shadows clawed at her, creeping closer, their voices rising into a vicious crescendo. Visions swirled in her mind, but they were too chaotic to decipher, too overwhelming to grasp. Emma felt the atmosphere shift, palpable dread filling the air. Transparency gave way to reality, the past was no longer resolved. Unfinished businesses loomed overhead like spectral gavel strikes, weighing down on her decision. Then, clarity struck. "I will not let this continue," she yelled, feeling fortified. The scroll's energy thrummed beneath her palms like a heartbeat, woven into the fabric of her lineage. "Emma!" David cried out, then everything went still. The shadows seemed to freeze as if awaiting her command. A decision loomed like a storm cloud over her heart. Could she really reshape their destiny? Or would that image haunt them forever? As her breath slowed, and determination surged through her veins, Emma, clutching the scroll, faced the waiting darkness. Was she ready to unveil what had been hidden away and risk the consequences? And as the stillness thickened, what awaited them beyond the revelation? The attic had stories yet to unveil, and in that brooding silence, she could only feel the weight of the impending storm. The air still crackled with energy, leaving Emma feeling both alive and fearful. The shadows lingered close, their fingers almost brushing against her skin. Deep down, she could sense the unyielding gaze of her ancestors, urging her on, but was it forward or backward they prompted her to go? "Do it!" A voice suddenly broke through the tension. Emma turned to find David, his face lit by the glow of the scroll, determination etched in his features. "You've started something. You can finish it." The gravity of his words weighed heavily on her. She squeezed the scroll tighter, its energy sparking against her skin. The whispers grew louder, transforming into coherent words, a chorus of pleading voices. "Release us." "What do you want?" Emma shouted, desperation creeping into her tone. "Tell us." The light from the scroll flickered as if responding to her urgency, revealing a harrowing sequence of events. Images of her ancestors unfolded like a film reel: betrayal, greed, and a bitter feud. Betrayal by a trusted friend, a family member lost to vengeance, a cycle set in motion that had cost them their peace. "Shatter the chains." The voice boomed again, echoing in the suffocating silence. With renewed resolve, Emma took a step closer to the illuminated scroll. She felt her heart thrumming in sync with its pulse. "I want to end this," she declared, gripping the edges of the parchment. "You must confront the truth of their pain," the voice commanded. "Only then can you break the cycle." "Confront? How?" Emma's voice trembled. "You know," came the echo, sharper and more insistent now. "You carry their legacy. Face it, Emma." In that moment, a surge of remembrance flooded her mind. A story whispered by her grandmother during long summer nights, a tale of a lost heirloom, a ring filled with untold power and dark secrets. Her heart raced as she recalled every detail. It was hidden in the old village. "No," she exclaimed, a cold sweat covering her brow. "The ring is the key to their grievances. If I can find it, I might be able to forgive, I can set them free." But as she started to turn toward the attic door, the shadows shifted. A cold wind swept through, and she felt the ground tremble beneath her. "Emma!" David shouted, fear creeping back into his voice. "The shadows, they don't want you to go." A wave of terror crashed over her as she felt the shadows stretching, engulfing David, pulling him into unknown depths. "No! David!" She cried out, reaching for him, but the darkness clawed at her, slashing at her resolve. Panic surged through her veins, and she hesitated. Could she really leave him behind? She felt the weight of generations pressing down every curse, every grievance. Find the ring. David's voice filtered through the chaos. Do it for us. In an instant, everything shattered. The scroll emitted a blinding flash, and the shadows recoiled as if burned. Emma clutched her chest, gasping for air as a corridor of light opened before her, pulsing with the promise of answers. If she chose to step through, the attic would bear witness to her confrontation with the past, but at what cost? Looking back at David, who was ensnared in a swirl of darkness, she made her choice. I will not abandon you. Then, with a deep breath fueled by courage, she plunged into the light, her vision fading as the world around her shifted. What awaited her on the other side? Was it salvation or damnation? And as the bright light enveloped her, one chilling thought occupied her mind: could she truly change the fate sealed long ago, or would history repeat itself yet again? Emma tumbled through the light, her body feeling weightless, as if she were falling through a dream. A pulse of energy coursed through her veins, and she felt a new force wrapping around her, lifting her. The world around her flickered and shifted, colors melding into one another, until at last, she landed on solid ground with a jolt. Gasping, she opened her eyes to find herself in what appeared to be the old village. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the flickering of distant lanterns cast a soft glow onto cobblestone streets. Time seemed to stand still, her heart racing as she scanned her surroundings. Where am I? She whispered. Shadows danced along the walls, and she could hear the distant echoes of laughter, sorrow, and whispers. A deep sense of familiarity washed over her as if these streets were alive with the memories of her ancestors. They stretched out, beckoning her to explore. Emma. David's voice shattered her reverie. She spun around to find him standing behind her, his face pale, panic dancing in his eyes. But, how could he be here? I thought you were trapped. She exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. I was, but something pulled me through something dark, he said, rubbing his arms as though feeling the chill of the lingering shadows. We're in the village, but it's not right. Everything feels wrong. The energy is heavy here. Then we have to find the ring. Emma's mind raced. It's the key, the only way to put their spirits to rest. Suddenly, a sharp wind howled through the small alley, raising the hair on the back of her neck. The laughter that had filled the air turned to a cacophony of furious whispers. They echoed in her mind, mingling with the histories of those who came before her. It made her feel small, insignificant. Emma. David called, his grip tightening on her arm. The shadows are here too. We need to move. They darted through the narrow streets, shadows licking at their heels, an ever-present threat. Shops stood shuttered, eerie silhouettes of lost dreams. Emma could feel her pulse quickening, raw terror igniting inside her. They needed to find the ring before the darkness consumed them. As they reached the center of the village square stretched wide, a gaping emptiness echoing with shadows. In the center was an old pedestal, worn with age. But on it sat a familiar glinting object, the ring. Is that? David started, stepping closer. Stop! Emma shouted, pulling him back just as the shadows swirled violently around the pedestal. It's a trap. The ground began to shake, fissures appearing beneath their feet. Black tendrils slithered towards them, seeking to ensnare their souls. Emma's heart raced, and she felt David's anxiety amplifying her own. We have to reach it. He shouted over the growing chaos, his eyes locked onto the ring with an intensity that set her nerves ablaze. But if we touch it at the wrong moment, Emma hesitated, her instincts warning her of the dark energy that surrounded the pedestal. Emma. This is our only chance. With every ounce of courage, Emma sprinted towards the pedestal, the shadows closing in. Just as she grasped the ring, a piercing scream rent the air, an anguished, otherworldly lament that seemed to emerge from the very depths of the earth. It felt like a violent explosion, pain surging through her thoughts. Emma's vision blurred as memories of betrayal surged, twisting through her mind like a storm. She stumbled, darkness clawing to claim her, and in that moment, an unsettling realization crashed down upon her: the ring was not just an object. It was a vessel of pain and suffering, tied irrevocably to the cycle of vengeance that had haunted her family. As she clutched the ring, the shadows converged. "Emma!" David's voice filtered through the chaos, growing desperate. "What have we unleashed?" She breathed, panic surging anew, but even as darkness threatened to swallow them whole, Emma's heart whispered the truth: they could break the cycle, they had to. Was she strong enough? Could she confront the echoes of her ancestors and shatter the chains binding their souls? Emma took a breath, steeling herself for what was to come, knowing the path wouldn't be easy. But then, a piercing gaze met hers through the shadows. And it wasn't just a gaze, it was a reflection of herself, a dark version whispering an undeniable truth: desire for power. What would she choose? Would she succumb to the darkness, or could she drive it away? Her heart raced with urgency as the final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. In that moment, she understood: the true battle was just beginning. Emma blinked against the overwhelming darkness, her breath quickening. The shadows writhed, forming shapes that shifted just at the corner of her vision. David's voice, strained and urgent, broke through her swirling thoughts. "Emma! Focus! We need to get out of here." His words pulled her back, grounding her even as the chilling knowledge of the ring's power pulsed through her. She felt it there, warm in her palm, but heavy, like an anchor tied to her soul. It was as if the very history of her family clamored for her attention, demanding she honor their pain. The shadows twisted menacingly, growing thicker, darker, pulsating with an angry energy that built like a thunderstorm. "We can't stay here!" Emma shouted, her voice barely rising above the tumult. The desperation in David's eyes mirrored her own. They surged forward, toward the alley that would lead them out of this nightmare. With every step, whispers coiled around them, each flickering flame of light from the lanterns illuminating ghostly figures, faces from the past that begged for release, faces marred by anger and sorrow. Emma halted, transfixed, as one figure stepped forward. A woman with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression reached out, her voice barely a ghostly breath. "Help us or join us." Emma's chest tightened, the weight of the decision crashing down on her. It echoed in her mind: the allure of power, the chance to right wrongs. But at what cost? The promise of greatness seemed to shimmer just out of reach, threatening to consume her entirely. "No!" she cried, shaking her head. "I want to let you take me. I want to be part of this." David grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the mermaid-like figure as it dissolved into a swirling mist of darkness. "Keep moving. The longer we stay, the more we're pulled in." They sprinted through the alleys, the cracked cobblestones releasing the scent of rain-soaked earth, mingling with the pungent aroma of decay. The shadows scraped along the walls, fastening onto them, claw-like tendrils trying to convince Emma to abandon her quest. She held onto the ring tightly, its warmth battling against the encroaching cold. As they rounded a corner, there was a narrow entrance to a forgotten tunnel, its mouth gaping open like a hidden secret. "We can hide there," David urged, hope flickering in his voice. But the shadows lunged forward, bold and fervent, shrieking their torment. "Now!" Emma urged. They dashed into the tunnel, the darkness swallowing them whole. Hard stone embraced them, the chill of the air wrapping around like a vice. But there was a pulse here too, a heartbeat of ancient power, thumping in time with the chaos outside. The moment they stumbled deeper into the tunnel, Emma felt it. A shift in energy. The shadows clambered at the edges, but they were different here, less tangible, less commanding. The echoes of whispers transformed into a low hum, almost melodic. "What is this place?" David breathed, awestruck. "I don't know," Emma whispered back. "But I think the ring is connected. The energy here feels different, almost like it's alive." Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Emma's wrist, and she gasped. The ring twisted, glowing brighter, as if awakening. A vision filled her mind, faces of her ancestors swirling in despair, pleading for resolution. A familiar voice broke through the haze, a voice that felt like her own yet distant, compelling yet dark. "Use the ring, Emma. Join us." "No," she cried out, fighting against the magnetic pull, her heart racing as the temptation clawed at her resolve. "I'm not like you." David, sensing her conflict, grabbed her shoulders. "Emma, listen to me. You have to make a choice. Embrace the pain and unleash it, or help them find peace." The weight of the ring burned in her hand, the shadows pressing in around them. Emma felt her mind teetering on a precipice, the urge to wield that power beckoning. "Make your choice, Emma." What was her answer? At that moment, the shadows lunged forward with a renewed fury, shrieking with rage. Emma's resolve trembled. Could she confront the darkness and emerge unscathed? As the shadows clawed toward them, and the ancient voices soared in a crescendo, time slowed. Emma was at a crossroads. What would she choose, and how would it define the fate of all bound by the ring? Emma's heart pounded like a drum, echoing in the hollow space of the tunnel. Shadows stirred, feeling alive and menacing, their whispers morphing into a cacophony of threats and promises. Each pulse of darkness wrapped tighter around her, urging her to surrender. "Emma." David's voice broke through the chaos again, sharp and clear. "You're stronger than this. Don't let them get to you." She looked at him, his eyes fierce with determination, yet she felt the struggle deep within her. What power lay in the ring? What were they all asking of her? Could she truly wield it without becoming consumed? A scream pierced the air, a shrill echo that felt both distant and personal. The shadows shifted, forming grotesque figures that clawed towards them, hungry for her submission. They sought to burrow deep into her mind, to twist her thoughts until she no longer recognized herself, time distorted, stretching out as she fought against the shouts of her ancestors, the ancient call to join them. "Use the ring, Emma." The voice grew angry as it echoed. "Join us." "No. I want to be like you." Emma shouted back, clenching the ring tighter as if that alone could shield her. Suddenly, the hum in the tunnel crescendoed, creating a vibration that rattled her bones. The energy shifted, pulling her closer to an unseen force. It felt like a warm embrace, promising safety but carrying an undeniable threat. She felt herself swaying, teetering between fear and the temptation of forsaking everything she knew for a taste of that forbidden power. "Emma, make the choice." David's voice quivered. "Don't give in to the darkness." But how could she not? The shadows danced with promises of power, of revenge for wrongs that spanned generations. What was the pain of her ancestors compared to the strength she could wield? She could right so many wrongs if only she stepped into the shadows. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she shook her head violently. "No, I want to fall. I refuse." In that moment of defiance, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in pain as if her rejection was a tangible blow. Their rage intensified, the energy crackling around them like electricity. She felt the ring pulse, an echoing heartbeat synced with her own desperation. Then, everything halted, an unnatural silence swept through the tunnel. The shadows lurked just out of sight, regrouping, waiting. Emma stood breathless, unsure if she had met their challenge or merely provoked the storm. "Is it over?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper, straining to pierce through that eerie calm. Emma faltered, her senses on fire, still feeling the oppressive weight of the shadows. "I don't know. But I can still feel them, waiting." Just then, a loud crack reverberated through the tunnel, the ground beneath them trembling. A fissure opened in the stone wall, and from it, the shadows surged forth, twisting like smoke, endless forms crying out, "Release us! Join us!" "No!" Emma screamed, holding the ring out like a shield, its glow brightening, illuminating their way. It was now or never. "There's more to this than we know," she turned to David. "We can't give in. We must find the source of this power, or we will be lost. With steely resolve, she stepped closer to the crack as shimmering light spilled from it, illuminating the darkness for the first time. The shadows hissed, retreating. Her heart felt lighter, clarity returning. What if that's their source? David cautioned. Then we bring it back to the light, Emma said, taking a deep breath. But we must hurry. They won't stay away long. Working together, they began to inch toward the light, the ring's energy pulsing in harmony with her heart. But just as they reached the edge, a cold wind swept through the tunnel. Shadows swirled menacingly around them, their eyes glinting with malice. The choice had not been made. The ultimate test lay ahead. If they crossed into that light, what would be waiting for them on the other side? What untold secrets would emerge, and would they be able to fight back the darkness once and for all? A bright, blinding light erupted as Emma and David stepped into the crack, the shadows writhing around them like angry serpents. Time seemed to stand still for just a heartbeat, one fleeting moment before everything changed. The warmth of the light surged through them, washing away the weight of the darkness they carried. As the brilliant glow receded, they found themselves standing in a vast chamber, dazzling and alive. The light radiated from a stone, pulsating like a heartbeat at the center. It hummed with energy, casting soft reflections along the ancient symbols carved into the walls. Each symbol vibrated with stories untold, whispers of wisdom wrapped in shadows of agony. Emma felt herself drawn to the stone, its glow beckoning her as if it were a long-lost friend. Her heart raced, the burden of generations urging her forward. This must be the source of their power, she exclaimed, glancing at David, whose fear mixed with awe. This is it, he breathed, stepping next to her, eyes wide. But how do we break the cycle? The shadows are still restless. The air thickened with energy as if the whole chamber was holding its breath. Emma pressed her palm against the stone. A shock of electricity coursed through her, igniting every nerve ending. I think it's telling us something, she stammered, the symbols shimmering in response to her touch. Suddenly, a swirl of the same shadows they had evaded began to manifest, forming shapes that were once familiar yet foreboding. The anguished faces of her ancestors materialized, faces twisted in sorrow, lost between worlds. They demanded reconciliation, eager for release from their eternal torment. Emma's heart pounded like frantic drumbeats. Listen to me, she shouted at the phantoms, her voice echoing back to her, filled with urgency. You don't have to suffer any longer. Help us understand why this pain holds you. We want to heal. In response, the shadows swirled faster, their cries merging into one, a choir of grief that wrapped around Emma like a shroud, suffocating yet compelling. And forgive, came a chorus that reverberated through the air, tearing at Emma's resolve. It's buried in your blood. The cycle won't end until you confront it. Gripping the ring tightly, Emma felt the weight of their grief settle painfully onto her shoulders. This was more than just her burden, it was a legacy that tied her to every choice made, every wrong inflicted. I will confront it, she vowed fiercely. I will break the cycle. But I need your truth. The chamber vibrated violently, the shadows descending upon her, swirling as if they could drown out her voice. What have you done? Screeched a figure, eyes wide with anguish. What will you unleash? Emma and David stepped back, clinging to each other as the shadows advanced. Face us, Emma declared, raising the ring high above her head, and with each heartbeat, the light shifted. It pulsed like a heartbeat, strong and clear, and suddenly, her ancestral memories flooded back, visions overcame her, racing through her mind, betrayal, lost loves, vengeance that spiraled out of control like a wildfire, consuming lives whole. This is what you've held on to, she cried, the truth pooling in her heart. The anger, the hatred, it has driven you to darkness. But we won't let it bind us any longer. In that moment, clarity washed over her. She could feel the energy of each spirit swirling, observing, longing for liberation but tethered by their own pain. Your grief has become your chains, Emma shouted. Let it go. We can rewrite this story together. The shadows hesitated. The sorrowful faces softened, doubt creeping in. Can we? One figure whispered, the voice frail yet hopeful. Will you forgive us? Feeling the lingering weight of uncertainty, Emma took a deep breath, the air heavy with unbridled terror and compelling hope. Yes. She replied, a single tear spilling down her cheek. But first, you must forgive yourselves. As she spoke, the chamber hummed with a vibrant energy, the golden light within the stone intensifying, wrapping around the ancestors like a radiant embrace. A collective sigh echoed, an understanding unraveling under the weight of misunderstood histories. With a surge of desperation and clarity, shadows twirled like leaves caught in a storm, all resisting, but Emma stood firm. No longer would they be slaves to their anguish. Together, they would find freedom through forgiveness. Suddenly, the ring burst forth an explosion of light, colliding with the shadows, dispelling the lingering darkness in a brilliant flash. The ancient energy surged, their collective grief seemed to twist, combining with Emma's promise of salvation, binding them in a newfound pact. The shadows began to dissolve, faces transmitting gratitude and peace as they soared into the bright light. Thank you, they whispered in harmonious unison. You have broken the cycle. Emma felt her heart swell, wrapped in warmth as the pain and weight of generations lifted from her shoulders. The stone suddenly pulsed once more, the shadows fading into a soft glow. Had it truly ended? Emma turned, eyes glistening with tears of relief, finding David watching her with sheer hope. You did it, he breathed out, seeing the light returning to the chamber. We did it. A bond sealed in their ancestors' truth and love. Together they stepped back into the light, ready to leave the burden of darkness behind. In that moment, they were no longer just Emma and David, they were the descendants of those who had suffered, a legacy turned towards healing, reconciliation, and unity. As they emerged into the world beyond, the clarity of dawn brightened the sky. The shadows had eased, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. The fight against the darkness persevered, but they stood resolutely defiant, forever changed by an encounter that reshaped their understanding. But their journey wasn't over, it had just begun. Now more than ever, it is time for you to take charge of your own story. If you want to keep riding this wave of energy and discovery, you need to subscribe now and click that bell for all notifications. Don't miss a single thrilling moment. Smash that like button now if this conclusion touched your soul. Help this story reach those who need to hear it. Flood the comments section with all your reactions and theories. Your voices matter, and I want to hear everything, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could resonate with this journey. Join the movement of healing and connection. Let's rewrite our stories together.